Oh, we are live now. Well, welcome and assalamu alaikum, everybody. I'm so happy and excited that today with us we have Dr. Uh, Asif Hirani. I've been trying to get in touch with him for a long time, and alhamdulillah, we are able to have this very important discussion. I'll just give a very brief introduction of Dr. Asif Hirani. And Dr. Asif Hirani is the Dean of Amal Institute in Dallas. He has a PhD in from Medina University in Usul al-Quran and uh, and Tafsir. He's written multiple books. One of my favorites is the looking at Surah Yusuf from a psychological perspective, and we don't look at that. And also, he takes heads on all the taboo and controversial topics that nobody else wants to talk about. Since so he talks about them, like Islam and gender and sexuality. He's in Dallas. It's a very brief introduction. Thank you so much, Dr. Saab, for joining. And I know I did not do justice to your introduction, but please, for our audience who's joining, uh, welcome. And if you can briefly introduce yourself as well.
Well, Jazakumullah khairan, first of all, for your generous introduction. I don't deserve this. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you anyway, for being kind and charitable in your approach. Actually, that's pretty much summarizes my life so far. Alhamdulillah, I was born like yourself in Pakistan, and
Mm,
then I came. My maternal side from my mom is always here, so I used to
mm.
come spend summer here before I moved here. And now I'm here for last 15, 17 years, Alhamdulillah.
Oh, mashallah. So you came here around like in mid 20s, 2025 or 2005 or
Um,
something?
I'm coming when ever since I was 11. I
Mm,
used to spend summer here. I will go back. And then I came here when I was 2019 or 20.
okay.
And then I went back again for some time and came back.
Mhm. So that's why you ever had a very interesting journey, right? From like your evolution from your fashion design into this is transformation that you've had, and then again when you transform, your focus became psychology and the development of children or the tarbiyah, which is our point. So can you like kind of like take us through your journey, like how did you transition into this, what we are today from what we
Yeah.
used to be?
Yeah, it means when I was there are multiple ways to look at this. I would see in our times the biggest challenge for parenting, at
Hmm.
least us in the West, or actually
Right.
anywhere in the is to raise the kids with Allah consciousness in an ungodly environment.
Mm.
Because we are raised with two value system,
Hmm.
and one is godly, the other is ungodly. And unfortunately, the predominant worldview is ungodly. So if by default you will raise your kids, then eventually they will going to, or their generation will going to become ungodly. So you have to make extra effort to inject godliness and God-centric, Allah-centric nature of parenting have to be there. So that slowly and gradually start coming. I went through the psychology circle, then I went to philosophy circle, and then I now became balanced because philosophy is all about here, psychology is all about heart. And now I say that subhanAllah, there have to be a balance. And Alhamdulillah, wallahi, one thing I appreciate about Quran is on the book of philosophy, even though it addresses philosophy without using the philosophy terms. And Quran is not the book of psychology, even though Quran addresses psychology, because who will know psychology better than your creator? But the way Quran addresses psychology and philosophy topics without mentioning complicated terms is remarkable, subhanAllah, that Quran addresses to every individual. So that's one of the effort I did in Surah Yusuf.
Mashallah.
If I have to rewrite, I have to make many changes, I have to admit, because it was published in 2016 and now we are in 2025, things evolved. So I was exposed to so many things which, let's say, which I was not at the time of 10 years back when this was publishing. So, but yeah, this was the brief introduction of why I picked Tarbiyah and parenting as an issue. It's still a lot more things to be done, but I think one of the biggest challenge which we have and something need to be done not only in a book or research form, rather collectively we have to do, and and that is how to raise Allah-centric kids in an ungodly environment, as a community, not as an individual,
Hmm.
because serious challenges are coming with technology and ChatGPT. And if we wo-
Absolutely.
if the believers community is not organized, then the Noah's Ark, if Noah's Ark is not organized, then eventually the flood will take our kids away.
So many topics, just in this one, um, there are like so many topics when we talk about godly and we talk about this environment. But let's start with tarbiyah. What is tarbiyah? Before we get into the psychology and
Yeah,
emotional
Tarbiyah
intelligence.
is very different than the English word raising kids. Because English word raising kids have a different conceptualization. Tarbiyah in Arabic means, if you will allow me to use the Arabic, insha shay halan fa halan ila hadd tamam. It means that you are taking one thing from one stage to the other, then another stage to the next, until it reaches to its full potential. That's a definition of tarbiyah.
Mm,
And tarbiyah comes from the root word Rab, al-aslu fi Rab. So our Rab, Allah, does tarbiyah for us because it takes us from one stage to the other in the life. Now you will have a perception or conceptualization of what the tarbiyah is. So now tarbiyah is different than the word raising. Means tarbiyah is that you are not working on the empty pot when you are doing tarbiyah of your child. He have
mm,
something. Raising is you are putting everything in an empty pot. So now the
mm,
question is, when we are doing tarbiyah of our child, we are not working on the empty pot. They have something. What do they have? Well, they have the fitrah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They have the introduction, ruh, coming from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you do not have to inject your entire worldview in them. They already have the fitrah. All you have to do from the tarbiyah standpoint, not from raising standpoint, is you have to remove the layers which have come in from desires and doubts and environment until they reach to their full potential. And once they have found and unleashed their potential and fitrah, then they will be on cruise control whether you are in this dunya or not. That is Islamic tarbiyah. It's not hijacking the
excuse me.
personality. um,
Mm,
Discipline them, but it's not hijacking their personality. Every child is different. They have the
mm.
fitrah. So making sure that they recognize their fitrah, they go close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Your job is to just remove the layers of weakness which are come from environment or desires. That's how it's different from the English word raising, because raising include you have got a child as a machine and you have to make them a machine for a state. Life goes on.
Right.
So yeah,
Absolutely.
we have a different conceptualization.
So I think like what I'm like, and I thought about it a little bit, and I think like one of the reasons we named our academy Edifying is I thought that was like the closest we could find a word, which is to say mentoring somebody intellectually and emotionally and morally. So that's why we kind of like named our our initiative, our effort in that way. Now, being here, there's like so many topics that we already discussed. In your experience, I want to get your perspective first before I start. I have like a host of questions here, but before I start, uh, what do you think are the challenges faced by parents here in not generally in US, but like in West, whether that's UK, Canada, Americas, Australias, or any of these parts of the world?
Yeah, that's a very loaded question, and I'll try to
Hmm.
brief it because there can be separate series of podcasts can be done on this
Of
topic. As an
course.
imam for last 15 years in this country, I have so many stories, but let's start. Let's continue with where you ended. Um, the parenting in Islam have to be holistic. It does not have to
Mm,
be only physically nourishing them. In Islam, we believe human being is not just the machine, mechanical, physical body. Human being is body and soul together. Body and soul together. So human being is made up of body, physical body, mechanical body, made of few chemicals. But that's not what Asif Hirani is. That's what not Raza Bhai is. That our body, along with the soul, which came from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that makes us human being. Then we have intellect, as you said. Then we have emotions, as you said. So as a parent who is doing tarbiyah, we have to pay attention to all these aspects: physical, so spiritual, which is soul, emotional, and intellectual. The problem in the West I have seen, and because of the Western imperialism, it's going global now, is that we only consider our kids. as a machine where parents are responsible to take care of their physical needs. If they are hungry, we have to give them food. If they need a doctor, we'll take them to ER, which is a good alhamdulillah parenting. Even physical parenting is not complete because when they are teenagers and now some different kinds of viruses have installed in their body and they have different sensual needs, we won't fulfill their needs from a halal way. And then they have sexuality issues, unfortunately. But apart from the physical needs, we have to address the most important need, which is a spiritual need. If you look at the
Mm,
child schedule, means in America, I don't know, maybe the same thing in Pakistan now. I don't find Allah in their schedule. 8 to 9 hours they will sleep. 8 to 9 hours they'll go to school. Nap time, sleeping time, snack
mm,
time, lunch time, dinner time, playtime, fun time. Okay, Habibi, where is Allah? Where is Allah in your schedule? And even if Allah is there, it's just like a cardio exercise for 5, 10 minutes yoga, just to please the parents. Where is Allah? Where is Allah in the discussions of the school? And then the secular modern education is teaching them anti-Islamic values. So one thing I would say as a parent, focus on the word holistic. Do not only take care of their physical need, because if they are graduated from Harvard and MIT, but if they lose Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they are still loser. But if they have PhD from Harvard
absolutely.
and they have Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with them, they will not only benefit themselves, they will benefit others because they will give it back to community. So holistic parenting is missing. I have seen in the West all of attention either physical or our religious isolationist people would going to take only spiritual, no physical needs or
Mm,
no intellectual needs. Sometimes you will find the least intellectual people, unfortunately, sometime in the religious segment because of their isolationist mentality. So neither we have to have assimilationist nor we have to have isolationist mentality. We have to have
mm,
a positive integration. I think that is missing from some of the parents. And how can parents know? Because parents are not even learned enough about the intricacies of the modern society, unfortunately. So yeah, if we can talk about this, but I kept it vague and general instead of going into specific, so we can inshallah have discussion on this.
we can definitely have a discussion, but you came to the point. The problem is not the children. The problem is the parents. Parents are not prepared to raise their children. Like not only that, they don't like parents themselves. You talked about godly and ungodly world, but let's just talk about the godly world, right? When you talk about just the godly world and like within the godly world, just let's just talk about Islam, right? Within Islam, parents do not have their own, like as you said, like Islamic education. They don't have any basics understanding of Islam and aqaid and fiqh and what is the different aspects, the different four school of thoughts we have and other things, right? And the main pain point is again, they don't start to realize this until they have kids, right? And by the time they're trying to raise their kids, they're running out of time because they need to understand what this is. And then now they go to like YouTube scholars and then they get all confused because everybody has their own, you know, reasons and whatnot. So again, I think how do we solve that? Because I think what we're trying to say, or what I gather so far, is it's not a children issue. It's first and foremost, it's a parents issue. And how do we catch that up quickly?
Well, it's not easy. It's not any quick solution will be delusional because every civilization goes up and come down, and it takes centuries.
Mm-hmm.
So right now, Islam is not the powerful civilization,
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately. Islam is powerful as a concept, as a deen, but Muslim as an ummah are very weak, as Iqbal said. उम्मत मरहूम की मुश्किलों को तू आसा कर दे मूर बेमाया को हम दोष सुलेमा कर दें. He's asking that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala please give us the strength of Sulaiman alayhi salam. We are actually the ant right now. Such a beautiful tafsir shari here. But anyway, so but I think it starts with parents because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said so. He said in a hadith, "Kullu mawlud yuladu ala al-fitra." فَأَبَوَاهُ يُهَوِّدَانِهِ أَوْ يُنَصِّرَانِهِ أَوْ يُنَجِّسَانِهِ. He
Mm-hmm.
said every child is born on fitra, then his parents convert them to Christianity or Hinduism or Judaism or Zoroastrianism. So this is clear. Parents' role is vital to change the fitra. So my friend used to say that it's easy to become parent, but it's difficult to parent a child. um,
Absolutely.
biologically and really. I would say uh, it parents have to start learning if they are ready,
Mm-hmm.
and it's we cannot take this casually. Parents have to give time, they have to attend courses, they have to have mentors whom they can seek and they can ask, and attach them to the masjid. One of the Imam Kaaba, Imam Saleh bin Humaid, wrote that there are five things which every parent, which every all of us need to do for raising right kids. And one thing is, he mentioned that parenting role is number one
Mm,
for raising good, confident Muslims. And then second, he says parents' responsibility is to enroll them in a good school, which will bring them close to Allah and bring them close to the benefiting creation. Third is enroll them in make them part of a good masjid, because masajid should be a community, not a social hub for one gender.
mm,
And then fourth is that to give them good company of friends,
mm,
especially post teenage and teenage, where the identities start coming up. And
mm.
then fifth is make sure that mass media and cell phone and social media, they use it in a productive way, because they can be parent if you are not doing your parenting. So I think that the parents have a huge role. It's not casual parenting they can take. And in the materialistic environment where husband and wife are just busy in the conveyor belt of life, earning more and more and more, you know what? Allah says, Al-Hakumut Takasur. Maybe earning more and more and more will distract you from something which is more important, and that is parenting your child. And one day you will going to come home and you will realize that your child have Abdullah and Fatima name, but on the inside, they are gone. And that will be too late.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, these are some of the questions I wanted to come back to later as well about cognitive dissonance. But um, one of the very important thing here, and especially probably in the West as well, is that since we're talking about parenting, we have to talk about the institution of marriage, right? And all of these things, I'm a very firm believer here, at least in the Western countries, or at least in the US, being here for such a long time. As you talk about, like, preparing for marriage, one of the things we have to educate, our youth as well as, like, their parents, because it's like like at least three generations we are talking about, right? Because it's not them, their parents as well, who came from like abroad, who were the diaspora. They don't have any knowledge of Islam, and they have like these cultural development, and there have to be have this distinction between the culture and uh, and Islam. But the point I was trying to make is, before we get married, we have to have like a prenuptial course. They have to go, they have to learn about Islam and the concept of marriage in Islam. And then, of course, quote unquote, we have the prenuptial agreement. I honestly believe we should have that. And we also, within that, have to decide, okay, how do we want to raise our children? What does the future for a family looks like? What does the future of us look like? And I think that is, I mean, I think if we're talking about parenting, we must tackle the institution of marriage itself.
Absolutely. It all goes together because unfortunately, in the Western society, once they remove the divine light and God, every
Mm,
institution have become privatized or individualized. So marriage, sex, parenting, family, all these things were connected under divine light in the Christendom. Christendom had issues with the abuse of the power of the churches and
yeah.
power between state and the church, and that's a different topic. But maybe that abuse opened the door, and now every institution, marriage is separate, sexual relationship is separate,
Mm,
parenting is separate, everything is separate,
mm,
unfortunately. And everything is privatized, everything is based on the feeling. And by the way, that's a separate topic. Similarly, now we cannot separate, as you said, parenting and family, because in Islam everything goes together and everything have a divine light from Allah
mm,
subhanahu wa ta'ala. So yeah, it all starts with the marriage. It all starts with the understanding of the marriage you are going through early on, Sharia compliant meeting before you're going to get married.
right.
That our worldviews match or not.
Mm,
And then if worldviews match, if there are deal breaker, then put on the paper prenuptial agreement. You know, something which I found it really surprising, that most of the Muslims don't know that prenuptial concepts are Islamic concepts.
absolutely. That's what
In
haq
the
marry, what we call haq marry, right? In Islam, right?
in the chapter of fiqh, every book of fiqh, Hanafi, Maliki, Shafi, Hanbali, they would say Babu Shurut in the chapter of nikah, the
Mm,
conditions which husband and wife are allowed to make, and the other party have to abide by that. And they would give
mm,
examples for that. And the Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu at his time, at his Khilafah time, there is a famous incident where a husband had the prenup with the wife that I won't move you beyond this region. And after the marriage, he was planning to move, and then wife came to complain Umar ibn Khattab that this is happening. I had the condition prenup agreement, and Umar said to the husband, "مقاطع الشروط عند الحقوق." That whatever the conditions agreed upon, that cannot be crossed, because this is prenup. So can we say Umar ibn Khattab is a modern person? Umar ibn Khattab is a feminist? Umar ibn Khattab? These are the modern dichotomies. Islam is not
mm,
modern or unmodern. Islam is Islam.
absolutely.
Let it be. So I think sometimes we become reactionary. So it's pretty Islamic concept. If there is a deal breaker, give both parties chance in a neutral way to jot down the points so that they can live happily.
Mm, absolutely. And I think that again comes back to the education that, the or lack thereof, you know, or as we said, like, I think these are like the further ain that everybody must have to study and learn, particularly when they're starting this new journey, not for themselves. But one of the things that you pointed out before was the connection with Allah and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And I think one of the most important thing that the spiritual disease that we have is the disease of wahan, right? The hadith of wahan, and again, the love of the dunya and the hate of the akhirah or the death, right? And one of the things as we study the seerah and the seerah of Sahaba Ikram radiyallahu anhu is their love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The reason they loved death was not because they just loved death. They loved death because they wanted to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They loved death because they wanted to meet Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And all of these things come together. And again, I think, like, as you talked about this, we don't have like a scheduled time for Allah and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And how do we instill love within the hearts and the soul of our children without force or fear that will consequentially have a rebellion reaction?
Yeah, I think there have to be a balance. First of all, uh, don't make them factories and ritualistic machines.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
don't ask them that you have to pray salah and you have to wear hijab because of some kind of fear. But yes, you discipline them and be strict if they are not praying in a kind way. Um, but you tell them the reason why you have to wear hijab if you're talking to a teenager, and the reason why you have to pray is because you need a spiritual reminder. It will help you to when you will connect to God. Versus you have to pray. There's no ifs and buts. They're too. Still, you have to make sure that they are praying, because I don't want to go into the liberal side responding to the conservatives, or I don't want to go to conservatives responding to liberals. Still, as a parent, you cannot allow your 14-year-old just to go on date with a guy. You cannot do this as a Muslim parent. But at the same time, when 14, 15-year-old will come to you with such a proposal, you can say, son and daughter, this will harm you.
Hmm.
That's why the concept of zina is haram, because it will harm you. Casual relationship have consequences. If you're serious, once your time will come, we're going to help you in getting married. Explain to them the reason why the social laws in Islam are there for our protection. It will protect us from harms. Instead, it's haram. No ways you are talking about. There's so many ahadiths about this that Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was responding to one Sahaba. He says, is a leave is zina. Can you give me permission of zina, Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam? And he says, أَفَتُحِبُّهُ لِأُمِّكَ. He actually gave a rational argument. He says, would you like someone to do same thing with your mother? Would you like to do same thing with your sister? Until he was convinced. Obviously, in our time, we are living in such a degradation of value that he might say, "Yes,
Well,
I don't care." But that's
well,
that's not the point. The point is society is completely uprooted from the moral, so we don't go with the social values. We still build the Islamic values. But anyway, rational argumentation that it will going to help you, but eventually your base should not be rational. Rational should be only argumentation to protect the divine laws. They're two different things. We are not rationalistic people. We are using rational to protect the divine guardrails. They're two different things. We're using akal. We are all for akal. We are using rational. But at the same time, at the end of the day, we are using rational arguments to defend the agreed upon divine guardrails. That's very important point because some people, their moral calculus is rational and they will gauge the divine guardrails based on that.
Yeah. So again, coming back to this point of like cognitive dissonance, right? And you touched it, and I want to continue on what you just ended with. We see these people, right? And you just touched it a little bit, but we talked a lot, and a lot of this is cultural Islam versus like what Islam is and what the parents have and what their understanding of is or misunderstanding of Islam is. But as you talked about a little bit, right? Talk about the degeneration of society, and we in the United States, we see that. We have people, girls who kind of like wear hijab, they go outside, they take it off, and they're their things, and then it's not that you know, college. Everybody knows what happens in universities and colleges and whatnot, and as you talk about like you give the example of the hadith, but like the situation we have here is like what I've noticed, and again you can correct me, is like the guys, the boys, they have their girlfriends, and then their sisters have their boyfriends, and they both kind of like normalize it. Is even like however you want to define it, but basically this thing has become more normalized. The use, that is, I guess, the word for it, right? And how do we tackle that? As you talk about, like and also this perspective of okay, have this strict hijab at home, and that creates, I think, not only a problem for that person, whether that's a mother or a father, but again, that thing will get to the next generation when they get married, they'll have kids, and they'll have those consequential psychological impacts in their parenting, which will basically define how they raise their children, and the chain reaction goes on.
Yeah, no, wallahi, this is a huge problem. I think the problem with us is that there are multiple folds. One is that nikah have become difficult. And then we are being asked to delay our nikah because of the Western standards of education.
Hmm.
But the problem is Western people don't wait for the sexual relationship after the graduation.
Hmm.
So we are Muslim from that angle that do not have the relationship, but at the same time modern from un-Islamic from that angle that no relationship before education or until we become something. I don't know what does it mean
What
until
does
we
that
become
mean?
something. So our kids starve. Just like you're asking your child not to eat halal food, not to eat haram food. They will die. They will become crazy, and crazy person can do anything. So our child, Muslim child, raised in this modern society, they are being asked not to have relationship in a haram way. Okay, fair, you're a Muslim, and then not to have relationship in halal way.
Mhm.
Okay, Habibi, what should he do or should she do? He will going to become crazy. And crazy person can do anything. So that's first problem that we are not addressing their needs. I remember I said holistic parenting.
Hmm.
So parents need to be realistic in their demand.
I think
Second,
well, sorry, go ahead.
yeah, tell
No,
me,
I have
tell me. No, tell me,
now.
please.
So I think coming back to this, because a lot of times we talk about this age, the fictional age of 18 years old or 21 years old, and that becomes like the point of all of a sudden, like over one night you become an adult, right? That's not the age of Islam. The age of Islam is 15 and 13, right? And that is a natural age too. Like if you look at the kids here in the United States, they're starting having these engagements, sexual engagements, when they're in seventh and eighth grade. That is the age of maturity. Now, where did the age of 18 came from? Again, post-industrial era, right? They want you to complete your education so you can become the part of the factory. Once you become part of the factory, you're packaging whatever you're packaging, you're earning money. That's when you can vote, and that's when you can, do other things. So we again, we're talking about the westernization of thought and colonization of Muslim mindset, right? But this is something that we have even in the United States. People don't realize like there are states that have lower um, marriage, like you can get married
Yeah,
before say 18, and
yeah,
people aren't aware of it. And again, like what happened was, if you look at our history, you talk about our leaders, by the time they were 20, 25, they were generals like Muhammad bin Qasim and all of the other ones, uh, uh, and now what we're doing is we're delaying the childhood by 10 years until like he graduates, gets a job. By the time he's 25, that's when he starts to go out and starts taking responsibility. And I think we are putting like a synthetic blockade of growth, tarbiyah, as you so, going from one phase to another. We are putting tarbiyah on pause from 15 to 25.
Yeah.
you know
Yeah, no, wallahi, very true. Majority of the scholars said the puberty age is 14 and 15 and 13, as
right.
you said. Even though there is a minority opinion about 17 and very minority about 18, from early scholars, but vast majority said 15 and 14. So I agree, but unfortunately, you have to. I'm thinking about this, and Iqbal was a genius. That's why I'm a big fan of Iqbal.
Oh, I love Iqbal, trust me.
Iqbal said that whatever you are trying to do in the last 200 years is just basically fixing square pegs in circle hole.
Absolutely.
Civilization has been taken by someone else is on a driving seat. He said in Urdu, अपने लिए रह गई ख्याली दुनिया हम तो रुखसत हुए औरों ने संभाली दुनिया फिर ना कहना हुई तौहीद से खाली दुनिया. I mean, someone else is on the driving seat.
We should do a podcast just on Iqbal, just me and you. Okay, we should do that. Okay,
Yeah,
inshallah.
I'm teaching a 16-hour course on Iqbal. So inshallah, I'll announce soon. But yeah, absolutely. We should definitely do multiple podcasts on Iqbal because I think he's a genius. Every person, I realize that, subhanAllah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as said by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, "Yujaddidu laha deenaha." Allah will going to
Mm.
send someone in every nation within 100 years, someone who is going to revive the spirit of the religion, not reform, revive the spirit of religion. I do believe that Iqbal was one of the many revivalists of our time. So we should definitely spend more time in studying, not casually, but seriously, a
Well,
serious study of Iqbal.
well, the thing with Iqbal and also Jinnah as well, a little bit, because I studied Bangladana when I was in eighth grade. Like I was in
Mashallah.
Pakistan. My mom, she had it, and like I just got influenced by it and whatnot. So like now I've been talking to Iqbal ever since. So my point being is, we don't realize these things, and again, we're talking about our models, right? A lot of these issues, like the issues that you talk about, sexuality, morality, gender reality, they do not come from traditional Islamic uh, scholars, ulama, right? And that is because we have realized the issues. We are having this discussion because we're living and experiencing a Western life. We understand the Western thought much better than people who are living in the Muslim countries, so to speak. And that is the thing, the unique case with Iqbal was, now Iqbal and Jinnah as well, is, people don't realize they were in a time where the Ottoman Empire was falling, World War I was happening, and they studied law, philosophy in Europe, Germany, England, whatever. So they had a very profound everything. It was a very dynamic time. It was a global transformative time in politics and society, and they experienced it and they foresaw it what was happening. They knew exactly what was happening, and they foretold it because of their experience. And I think that is just so true even today because that paradigm has not shifted. We are still in the same paradigm.
Just Brits have taken the role of Brits have been taken over by the Americans. That's it.
Westerns, Europeans, however you want to call it. I mean, Americans
Yeah.
are not, they're all Europeans, right? So Americans are not
Yeah.
Americans, really. Americans are Europeans.
Euro Americans, right?
Euro Americans. Where you from? Right. So again, we were talking. I think you were trying to make a point, and I kind of like went into onto my rant, and I forgot what you were talking about. So please, I apologize.
Yeah, no, so marriage, we have to make marriage easy first thing as a parents. We have to have a conversation with our kids. Then at the same time, we have to realize that the accessibility to the casual relationship is it increased or decreased. Or it have increased tremendously because technology is being handled by a different civilization with different morals. That's your fault. You have left the technology
Absolutely.
for them. And now you are actually having isolationist mentality. What your kids will do, they will become crazy. So at least make things easy for them. If you cannot claim back and work hard to get the technology back. So that's the second thing. As a parent, we need. I'm not just bashing parents. I'm a parent myself, but I
Right.
feel really bad
For our
when
own ummah, it is a
absolutely
collective problem. As you said.
when there are good brothers and sisters, they want to have a halal relationship, and parents were going to bring their age or whatever the reason. Man, I have three kids. If someone will going to if my son will going to bring someone's daughter and they will stay in my house for 2 3 years until they will become financially stable, what the daughter will going to eat extra? Just one more roti? I have to provide that. That's it. Why
Mm.
can't I think like this? That okay, at least my son will have halal relationship. At least I will take care of my daughter-in-law, and until they will
Well,
going to complete their college or whatever. But
I
it
might
is
talk.
disastrous that if you are saying no, not until you finish your masters and not until casual relationship is becoming more accessible, subhanallah. And you were saying before, the average American have a first encounter when they are 16 or 17. Can you imagine? 90% of them. This is disastrous if you won't make it easy. And at the same time, it's a now I'm
And
coming from the other side. If you are raised by parents who are not conducive for spirituality, and all of a sudden you revive the Islam, then you have some responsibility. If your parents are giving you a hard time, talk to them, become responsible, be patient, inshallah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will help you, and eventually try to do it in a halal way as soon as possible after you reflect the responsibility also. Because financial burden is a huge burden on marriage in our times. So there are both ways to see this, but at the end of the day, this is just the patchwork. Someone else is on the driving seat. So collectively, we have to basically make ourselves trendsetter, not the trend follower. That's how we're going to help Ummah back in this time of crisis.
mashallah, very good. And again, you touched a lot of points about technology and how we have lost that track of, and every aspect of life, science and politics and social sciences and all of that. One of the points you touched was, again, well, before I go to that point, I want to talk about braising. What we're talking about is ideological Muslims versus cultural Muslims. And a lot of our marriage problems are because of, uh, culture or family marriages they want to do. They want to bring their, people from, their home country. They want to get their their daughters marrying their uh, brothers, son, and so on and so forth, right? And that also creates a lot of not only a problem of uh, for the person whoever is here, because it's two different cultures, right? The person who's growing up in over there on the other side of the pond versus they're growing up here, they'll have different mentality, and they cannot emotionally and psychologically interconnect with each other. So I think when we're talking about an institution of marriage and these cultural marriages, I want to call it cultural marriages is because we talked about marriage and truth, uh, and everything in between. One of them, I don't know the statistics. I honestly don't. But I know there's a lot more divorces now than they were before, like 10, 20 years ago. I also know a lot of them have to do with, somebody getting married in Pakistan, coming back here, and they don't align, and then they get, divorced. And the kid is there and the father is there, and it's just, and then, and unfortunately we are having, fatherless, parenting here for Muslims as well. So I think the point I was trying to make was, the difference between ideological Muslims versus cultural Muslims.
Yeah, even though I know that this term is contested, is Islam an ideology or not? Because someone might argue whenever you put any ology or ism, that will destroy it. I actually have uh uh or I just want to show you. Oh, subhanallah, this is blur light. Let me okay.
Islam, isms and ideology is awesome. Okay.
So I do believe that whenever you'll put ism and ologies, that will going to imbalance the approach of how you see Islam, either liberalism, conservatism, feminism, this ism. But at the same time, I get your point in terms of Islam as a holistic system of life versus cultural Muslim or identitarian Muslim. I identify as
Mhm.
Muslim like that. So, absolutely, when you're born in a Muslim household, you took Islam for granted only as a part of your identity. And that's a problem with identity and religiosity. That's a big problem with identitarian Islam, that you identify as Muslim, but there is nothing inside in your heart. There is no fire in your heart. And most of the people in our time are just identitarian Muslim, unfortunately. Uh, yes, are they truly legally Muslims? Absolutely. Janazah will be prayed, everything will be prayed.
Of
But we are not doing takfir of anyone. But if you'll go deep, do you have iman? Then very few people really understand why they are Muslim. What are the consequences of being Muslim? Yeah,
on that point, Iqbal said, right? "Khir ne keh bhi diya la ilaha to kya hasil?" Dilon ne insan.
absolutely. Um, no. So you said cultural Muslim or identitarian Muslim. So how to do that? Wallahi, that's a huge responsibility of the entire society. But I think every society have some groups and some movements who are working on reviving the real essence of Islam. Nowadays, because of information overload, there's so many meaningful podcasts like yourself we can find to go close to reviving the real meaning of being Muslim in the society. I think it's individual responsibility until we're going to have a collective institution. So right now we don't have water, so let's do tayammum. But you are Muslim, and you are not Muslim just because of your identity or because you identify as Muslim. There's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have given you this honor that He made you the Ummah of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and you didn't do anything to earn this. He gave you this. So now you have to pay it back in terms of serving Him sincerely, doing the service of this deen, so that you can show the face to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of judgment. So we have to have this ummah-centric mindset. Stay away from
Absolutely.
groupism, stay away from partisanship, because partisanship and groupism makes us intellectually disabled. Whoever is mainstream, this is important, whoever is mainstream, they are part of our brothers and sisters. Even though we disagree with some of the aspects, the benchmark is Allah and His Messenger, but we have to have an ummah-centric approach. बुतान रंग खू को तोड़कर मिल्लत में गुम हो जाना तो रानी रहे बाकी ना ईरानी ना अफगानी. We all are part of one ummah of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I think this identity is incredible for us, and we don't need any other identity. Ummah of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Follow up on that. What did he say? About wataniyat, right? He said something like,
Where are you going?
with both.
Uh,
सबसे बड़ा
okay,
बुत वतन,
okay.
right?
Let me tell you entire Wataniyat then. He says, इस दौर में मैं और हैं जाम और जम और
Jam or
साकी ने बिना की रविश लुत्फ सितम और तहजीब के आजर ने तरश व सनम और मुस्लिम ने भी तामीर किया अपना हरम और इन ताज़ा खुदाओं में बड़ा सबसे वतन है जो पैरहन इसका है वो मजहब का कफन है.
kafan hai.
But then he
And
says
now we
later,
stand up for national anthems for each country, like in Muslim countries I'm talking about.
can you imagine? And now I'm reading the
And that's a
books, and how
taboo. Like if
genius was Iqbal. How
Mhm.
genius was Iqbal. Now we have people, non-Muslim people, who are saying that nationalism is actually the religion which took power from the religion and gave it to the state. And
Right.
Iqbal said this in 20s and 30s, subhanAllah. He was a genius born before his time.
That's what I was saying, because he had a somewhat of religious bringing, because his parent, his father, was a religious person. Uh, and and then we compared that with what he was saying in the European context. That's what I'm saying. Like the context, we just read history, but we don't understand the context of that history. You know, you have to understand what was happening in Europe at that time. There was First World War, Second World War, and then the Ottoman Empire was going down, and then England was going down, and US was coming up. It was a very dynamic time in the world. You talk about the warfare had changed. The planes had came in, the bombs had came in from like arrows and bows and swords. Everything has changed, and I just saw, like, we definitely need to have like a chain podcast about Iqbal, inshallah, and we'll go by, and to me, like, I want the symbol of our uh, academy is a Shamma, and that is
MashaAllah.
Iqbal's Shamma.
MashaAllah. MashaAllah.
Parwana and Shamma. Like if you look at it, at least we tried to make it a Shamma. Like it is a light, candle light. I don't know if he did
And
a
we
good
have a
job.
very artistic depiction in his poetry, mashallah.
Yeah, he did. He did. I don't know if he did a good job of that, but that's what we tried to do anyways. And I lost my chain of thought. What are we talking about? We would definitely need to do like podcasts on Iqbal, inshallah, and also like like before the podcast ends, I wanted to I want you to give us a little bit more brief about your your journey and your course about Iqbal. And I don't know if you have you. I'm sure you probably met Dr. Abid as well in Islamabad. No.
No, I have spoke to Dr. Ahmed Javed
Okay.
from, I think, Lahore.
Okay.
Obviously, Dr. Isar Ahmed, I studied under him 2004.
Oh, you did? Okay, I
Uh,
didn't know that.
oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, so
And
Dr. Abid, um, he did his PhD in the educational concept of Iqbal.
oh,
And
mashallah.
so
There's
he's
someone
in.
in Canada who's also doing it. There's a sister
Mhm.
who just completed her PhD in the educational philosophy of Iqbal, and how to come up with how to reform our entire education system based on Iqbal's concept of khudi. I
Definitely, if
forgot
you
her
can.
name.
Well, you if you can think of her name and figure out like let's if we can connect, we can also bring her on this
Yeah.
platform and also get her advice on what we should be doing because that the
Yeah.
purpose of our platform is one of the reasons we made it online is so we have a global reach. So like and everybody can I know this bricks and mortars and like having that environment coming back to your points the five things you mentioned earlier all what it comes down to having raising a children in that environment. Like if you have an environment where we have like a concentration of Muslims, but it also starts from home too, right? Your parents have to have that too. First, they have to have the intention, excuse me, real intention that they want to have that culture, that environment in their home. And then, you part that with the society and, Dallas is a good place for that. Houston is a good place for that. Jersey is not a bad place for that. I'm not sure about Brooklyn, but but my point is that uh, so you were talking about. I think one of the things you were talking about before we went on the Iqbalism, taking from isms, is, or Iqbalogy. But my point is that what we're talking about is uh, okay is um we're talking about like the environment and like how it is important for the parents that we have to uh provide our children with this environment so they don't have that cognizance. There are like two important questions, right, that I want to take up, and I will leave it up to you how you want to prioritize them. First is Islamic education of the parents, right? A lot of times, kids, nowadays we talk about technology and technopoly and the social media, digital influence. They will go whenever they have questions. They'll YouTube it and Instagram it, and they will get like so many videos of that one topic, and then they have opinion of a Maliki scholar versus a Hamli scholar versus Hanfi scholars, and the parents are not ill prepared for that. Also, sometimes if the students, right, or the children, during their therapy, if they have issues, if they don't, they want to understand. They're like some verses of Quran, ayats of the Quran, or some hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They have questions. I think that is a very how should they handle it in that kind of scenario? Take it to the role of masjid,
Yeah,
imam,
that's a very important
role
question
of,
because information overload can confuse so many people. We are living in an information overload time where information is accessible. Like back in the day, the scholars would say, don't expose yourself or in your students to comparative fiqh. They will get confused. But now they are exposed because of information. Just one click and all the opinions will come. Now, I would say, and this is my humble and personal opinion, so anyone listening can feel free to disagree with me, that as a parent, forget about parent, as a teacher, we'll come to parents, inshallah. As a teacher, you have to give introduction of comparative fiqh to your
absolutely,
students, because if they will not learn from you, they will learn from someone else who might not be knowledgeable. So as a teacher, you cannot keep them away. You cannot just keep them in the bubble because the things have changed. The world have become a global village. We are not in a one jurisdiction place, and we are not a civilization power. So I have to understand. So you have to basically come up together. Secondly, but I do believe that you have to base yourself on one mazhab, one fiqh, and then
absolutely,
give comparative opinion that okay, this is Shafi, this is mainstream opinion. This is line circle of orthodoxy or orthopraxy. Don't go out of this. Um, Secondly, as a parents, You said Islamic knowledge. I do believe that before we can talk about Islamization of secular sciences, we have to desecularize the Islamic sciences.
No,
So,
I agree with that. I agree with that. I totally agree with that.
once we do this, then parents need to know. Like for example, I'm a teacher of comparative fiqh for last few years.
Mhm,
I can tell you youth benefits from it, but most of the time when parents would sit in my class and they would say, "Man, I am so shocked. I should have known this when I'm 15 and 16, so I could have raised my kids in a better way."
mhm.
And that's unfortunately, subhanallah. So that's something which parents need to take out their time. If parenting is a skill, but at the same time, it's a resources are available to develop those skills. And give yourself time, at least 1 or 2 hours a week, so that eventually you can invest on your self development, so that eventually you can build your kids also on that foundation. So that's from the fiqhi perspective. Then comes taskiya perspective, then come aqidah perspective, and then these are the mainstream opinions. Don't go out of it, because one of the problem is our religious phobia in secular societies. When we are exposed to two opinions within fiqh, both of them are mainstream. We'll say, see, Maulvis cannot agree on one thing. So you will go to the secular, well, politicians agree on something because the setup is that religion category is bad category, secular category is good category. That's the setup, how the nationalism works. Um, so train yourself. These are the mainstream opinions acceptable, and any opinion outside is not acceptable. Respectfully disagree with them and move on. That's what we should teach ourselves if we want to have a balanced kids in the modern society.
Absolutely right. So again, I totally agree with you. And there's a concept of valid disagreement within fiqh, right?
Yes.
They are dalil. That's what I'm saying. Like comparative fiqh, even like in traditional Dars and Nizami, they are not taught, comparative fiqh as a subject until you do takhasus or something like that, right? Not in, so like those are things that are missing even in our, what I call like, decolonizing our education, and that is like one of the intentions that we have here. So like that is a good thing for the for the ulama and the masajid. What should the parents do? They should just take them to like, and then like they're afraid. Okay, if I take them to this masjid or that masjid, maybe the imam knows or not doesn't know, or he will teach them one thing and not, because even a lot of like a lot of, I shouldn't say a lot, but like good amount of traditional scholars are not, they don't tackle it in this way of, to all kid, so the students or the children will understand it. As you said, like they will impose their thoughts and without explaining the differences and why there is differences. So
Yeah.
what should the parents do? And we don't have time to talk about it, but we also could talk about AI and how that impacts
Yeah.
everything else. But yeah, that was the point. That
Yeah,
was the
if
question.
I think it's very difficult for parents to keep up with the world while working and
Mhm,
then doing their responsibilities. Then they should outsource. They cannot do
mhm,
everything.
mhm,
And again, don't fool yourself that you are not the most ideal parent. We all have shortcomings. So connect them to the part of Ummah. Don't backbite the scholars, rather connect them to the scholars.
mhm,
That okay, this is scholar, you can learn this scholar, you can, but don't idolize the scholar, don't demonize
mhm,
the scholar, learn from them, so that eventually that binary approach, only this scholar is right, all other scholars are wrong, that approach should be gone. If you cannot
mhm,
teach comparative fiqh, but at least teach them all these scholars are our scholars. This is mainstream, I'm talking mainstream. And take the fiqh and the hadith and tafsir from them, and eventually become a better Muslim. And if there's a disagreement, then who doesn't have disagreement? Take the disagreement and then eventually gauge it after listening to both sides. Listen to thesis, listen to antithesis, come to synthesis. Instead of just going to thesis or antithesis, always go for synthesis mode. Teach them
absolutely,
in such a way so that eventually they will have balanced personality. Otherwise, they will be machines.
absolutely. All right, Dr. Saab, thank you so much. I wish we had much more time, and it was just like I didn't realize that once we had the introduction, we got into the flow. I didn't realize like what we're talking about. Like, well, thank you so much for your time. I know you have to go. I really am very grateful to you to give me your time and having this introduction, not knowing me personally. Even though I like I lived in Fords for a while, but never met you. But I think we should continue this discussion.
Absolutely.
Inshallah, we'll continue this podcast, and also like all of the podcasts, we should also align, um, how we can uh, collaborate together and the different fields that we're trying to do what we're trying to do and you're trying to do in leadership and that. So before we leave, I want to give you the opportunity to have the last word, see how what is your message for our audience, for the youth, and for the ummah.
Yeah, first of all, Jazakumullah khairan for having me, and me feelings are mutual. I would say that since we discussed about parenting, wallahi, parenting in our society is not a easy job. We cannot take it for granted. One thing which we couldn't cover is that no matter what parenting courses or even parenting workshop giver, if you are a person who is giving the workshops on parenting, never trust or be overconfident on your skills. Show to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala some brokenness and some humility. Show that Allah, we don't have hawl and quwwah, the power. You have hawl and quwwah, the power to change our kids' heart. Show the brokenness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because at the end of the day, it is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who controls the heart, not us. We can sometime, our overconfidence can make us arrogant. So this is just the last reminder. Don't keep Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and dua factor out of your life.
Well, absolutely, and that again is as we went come back to the circle like we talked about in the very beginning about the disease of wahid, which is basically forgetting the relationship that we have with Allah and Rasulullah. Thank you so much again.
Jazakumullah
We
khairan.
will inshallah do something similar very soon. Thank you so much. Assalamu
وياك
alaikum.
السلام عليكم.
All right, so I've ended the stream now.
Or Jazakumullah khairan. Raza bhai, wallahi I have to take